So after many, many days of drinking, singing, and telling stories and lies, and adolescents listen about sex and everybody, all the stories, as everything happens in a wake, but nobody says anything about it. So what would happen is that sometimes you'd have a table like this, or most of the families could not afford this, but the only thing they had in the house where you could lie down was a bed. And so they would be stretched out in the very bed that they'd been lying on. They'd die there, they'd stay there, and then we would just do everything. So they have to stay there for 3 days. That means they have to stay there 3 days and 3 nights. So it has to be 3 sleeping nights. I mean, darkness has to appear 3 times. On the first sunlight of the next 4th day after the 3 nights is, if they die at 12 o'clock, that's not a full night. You know, it has to be when it got dark before, you know, so you have to sort of know, like, if you came across them, they were dead, you know, you still have to give them 3 nights, full nights of. Okay. So whenever that is, after 12 o'clock is you start preparing the person. Now they're not in a box yet. You start preparing the person to remove from the house. And you think about what door do they come in last. In Ireland it's important, the door you go into a house, you go back out the same door. That's very important. So the same with the dead. When you die in the house, you go back out the same door. And if they've been sick a long time, people will, well, I don't know, like, let's just go for this door, we'll know. And so when you get to the door, you know, you stop. And there'll be this moment of silence. Now the coffin, they'll be in the coffin, and it's half closed. I mean, what I mean is not all the bolts are tied down. And so we're back here, there are all the people up there, and they're all humming, because like it's real now, like the body is leaving, and people are really starting to be emotional. Like it, sometimes like, oh, guess what? People haven't slept for about a week, because they've been taking care of the person, no sleep. The person dies, they can't sleep. It's like they've been awake, and they're like really either hyper, or they're just ready to collapse. And it's almost going to an altered state of consciousness. And so Kitty, my aunt, and we called her Kitty. She didn't like being called, hey, Auntie Kitty, you're going to piss her off, we'd say that. You know? And, you know, so, and we would appear, we knew, like she knew when to enter, you know, the best time. And we'd start going. And it's kind of like this. So you know, like when you goggle, you know, it's kind of, no. You're kind of like, we've got to open up your hands, open up the body. And you go, and you go along like that. And when you keep that up, you start crying. You just cry. You'll eventually cry. Yeah. Squeal is, you know, I know that's what drives me crazy about Gaelic. It's like they spell one day, one way, or one day, and it's called something else the next day. But here it's called. In China, it was very similar the way it's done. So then the body is taken out the door. If it's not raining outside the door, they get a bucket of water and throw it over the coffin. What's because water helps to sort of like, you know, the cleanliness I give you in the beginning. It's the water is the communicator. Water, stones, and fire is a part of communicating with the afterlife. They still could be alive. Okay. So if they're Catholic, they take them to the church and they stay there for I don't know how long. And now who digs the grave? I started digging graves, I probably was about 10 or 11, because you make a little bit of extra money. You're not supposed to take money, but when they put it in your pocket, you don't know where it came from. Oh, where did that come from? You know. And you dug the grave, you went to the grave, the family of the dead person never dug the grave. First cousins didn't dig the grave of the family, but another family would. You dig the grave, you'd throw all the dirt up this way, and you would dig down, and you'd find the bones of the previous person. You just dig up the bones and put them over here. You'd go down some little bit more. If it was a child that died, you dig way, way down. Sometimes you will ask, has there been a kid? And they will stay there. If they're, let's say, 7 years old when they die, you put them down and you cover it. and there's any more bones from previous death, you put that on top and you cover it up. That grave of the child is not disturbed until they'll be like 21 years old. So after 21, the next person is to be buried there. You dig them up and you put all the bones go together. You don't know who's who. You just put them all together and put them in the bottom. Cover them up. But for the child, you wait. You know, sometimes before, like you look to see like who's buried there, or sometimes you only get the year of the person died. You don't get when they were born, because age is not used. You know, sort of like, except when it's a child. Okay, so then you get the dead person. You put him down. And who gets the first shovel of earth? Now this is sort of like, talk about grief and muscle memory and grief. It's usually like the widow starts throwing the dirt in. He hands it to the next person. You hand it to the next person and the next person. Then everybody gets a chance to shovel in. And there is this, the members of the family are very active in the afterlife, right after the afterlife. Lifting the body up, putting it into the coffin. Cleaning the body, putting on the gown. The person is just look the way they look, and so when you take them down to the grave, what happens sometimes, they will stop because the pubs open at 5 and if it's getting kind of dark, they'll stop and they'll go in, and you know, and they don't close till about 11 or 12, but now they close at 2, like here, and so it gets too late, so they have to leave the body in the coffin in there, and somebody has to stay there with the body, because it's bad luck to leave the body alone until they're buried. The next day, you know, they come back down, and if they go to sleep, and you know, then it's real trouble because they're not going to wake up the next day, and you get them. Then you take the body down to the gravesite and covers it. If it's a wife or a husband, it's only filled in up to about, and there's about this much space that's not filled in. The dirt is kept to the side. When the other spouse dies, you fill the whole thing in. You don't put up the stone until both parents are dead. When both parents die, they put down all the names of, it's like a new stone, they put down the names of all of the people that has died, that's been buried there. So that's the kind of, so for example, two of my brothers died young. 7, I think the other one was a few years old. So they're buried with my grandparents, would be the Murphy family. The O'Morocoos. The O'Morocoos married the Oriodans, and that was the end of us. And so they're still arguing, you know, who owns the lot. So, sorry, go ahead and sit down. And so they were buried. Why? Because the grandparents are already there, so they would take care of the children. When a child dies, a sibling, like 7 or under particularly, that you have a spirit ahead of you, and you're talking to the dead, that you, the sibling, have a person in the afterlife that's going to take care of you where you're going to go. So when you pick up the shillelagh to go, it's like, where should I go? Like, you know, and it's like you get into this trance of talking to your siblings. So that's the kind of thing. So one time I was leaving my uncle's house, trying to cross the fields. It was so dark I couldn't find the opening, and you know, it was maybe about midnight. I crawled back up to the road, and I knew if I got up the road, I could find a way around the long way around. You know. So that's the kind of time like you communicate with siblings.